back to the Ethical Business Summit. My name is Adrian Nathaniel and I am your host. And today we'll be speaking with Michael Stone, who is the founder of Holistic Services Group. Now, Michael began his career in corporate finance in Australia. Before he became an equities trader on Wall Street, he was actually working just a few blocks away from the events that unfolded on 11th of September in 2001. And those events really was a catalyst for him to find more meaning in his life. And so 6 months later, he found himself doing a variety of different things, from looking at yoga, at wellness, doing different sorts of retreats, where he's looking at life coaching, brain gym. And ultimately, what he saw was that there was a massive need for wellness in the corporate area. And it has become his massive passion now to bring more wellness and well-being into the workplace. And so today he's going to be talking with us about workplace culture and what he is seeing in the industry. So in a moment, he's going to be joining us. Excellent. So thank you so much, Michael, for joining us today. It's great to have you here.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Thank you, Adrian.
Awesome. So now, firstly, let's just jump straight into it. Now, can you tell us a little bit more about your background and what led you to start Holistic Services Group?
It's a rather long story, so I'll try not to ramble on too much, but it is very interesting. So going way back, I always thought economics and finance was something that I was destined to be involved with from even in high school studying economics. I really enjoyed it. I loved the theory. And I really appreciated the importance of economics in society and how it can really be part of a functioning, a highly functioning and evolved society. And so one thing led to another. I ended up studying economics and finance at university. And my first job was actually at Arthur Andersen. For some of you, you may or may not remember, I'm showing my age here, but they were one of the big four accounting firms. And I actually went into the corporate finance department, which was quite unusual at the time, because typically they would take people either from audit or other experienced financial organizations. But I was really lucky, very persistent. I had like 4 or 5 interviews with the partner of mergers and acquisitions at the time, and we clicked, and luckily I got in. And it was working there that I realized that sometimes things aren't always as they appear, because this was my dream job, to get a job with one of the best organizations in the country. And not only that, but to work in their corporate finance department. And I started to realize that it was actually quite a dysfunctional place to be. So, after a while, working on spreadsheets and trying to figure out ways to value companies so that we'd be in favor with those that asked us to do the valuations. And it just started to become a little bit tedious after a while. And I think furthermore, it was the environment. I realized it was quite a toxic environment. We started to grow in numbers. And as stress levels built and more people came on board, more managers, politics started to come into the equation as well. Combine that with Friday night drinks and carrying the partner, who shall remain nameless, home as they were intoxicated, just made me think twice about what is going on here. Why am I really doing this? What's the bigger picture? So dysfunctional relationships, I think, was really the issue that got to me, because I love working with people. And at the end of the day, when I saw the bickering and the politics and the nastiness and the dysfunction, I thought, okay, there's got to be something else. And I saved up my money and I went backpacking for a while. I quit my job there. My dad said I was a bit crazy, which I did agree with him, but I said, Dad, it's just something I've got to do. I can't stay there. And I went backpacking through South America for a while, had some pretty incredible experiences. But that's how I actually met the man who then offered me my next job. And that was in Mexico. And that's another whole amazing story, which maybe on another episode. But basically, he had a hedge fund in New York City. And we literally bumped into each other at this little gathering in Mexico. And he said, hey, how would you like to come work for me in New York? And I said, wow, that would be pretty cool. And I said, but I've still got a bit more traveling to do. And he said, that's fine. Let's just keep in touch. And I finished my travels and kept in touch. And sure enough, he offered me a job with his hedge fund. And he was kind of a new age guy. His firm was called Spirit Partners. So I kind of knew I wasn't going back to that, old school Arthur Andersen environment. And I was quite excited about working on Wall Street. I thought, gee, okay, this is going to be pretty exciting stuff. And so I finished up my my adventures in South America and moved straight to New York City. And at first it was exciting and just loved the whole the pace of living in the Big Apple. But once again, after a while, it was about 2 years, I started to think, gee, what I'm really doing here is I'm sitting at a computer screen watching flashing numbers, trying to make as much money as I possibly can for people I've never met before. And around about that time, 9/11 happened. And that was the catalyst. That was the final, I guess, the straw on the camel's back, as they say, that just made me reevaluate once again what I was doing. And it didn't take me long to realize that I needed to make a change in my life so that I made a positive contribution. So one of the things that helped me deal with the grief and the trauma of being a block away from, the events of 9/11 was to do something in honor of all those people who passed away. And for me, the commitment I made was to change my life and find a career that made a positive contribution to society. So I quit my job on Wall Street and started to study all different types of natural therapies and healing modalities. And I found that some of them were pretty wild and wacky, and others were, pretty amazing. And I thought, gee, wouldn't it be a great idea if I could bring some of these amazing tools for health, healing, evolution into the workplace? And that was really the seed that started Holistic Services Group. So I came back to Sydney and just started off with a couple of different therapists and practitioners. And it's funny because, back then, meditation was considered really quite out there and something that only yogis did and a little bit esoteric. This is, going back 15 years now. And it's, quite funny to see how that has changed now, quite well-known household name brands calling me saying they need meditation. So that's a really fantastic evolution I've seen. But yeah, I used to call them relaxation classes back then. And we did a lot of corporate massage and stress management. And that was just in Sydney. And now, almost 15 years later, we're a national and we're in New Zealand as well. And pretty much provide a huge suite of services across the board, anything to make the workplace environment more enjoyable and inspiring.
That sounds awesome. What an amazing story. Actually, as you were just talking about meditation, then it reminded me of a book that I've read, The Diamond Cutter. Have you read that one? It's about this monk, Tibetan monk who was an American Tibetan monk. His teacher told him it was time for him to leave the ashram and to go out into the world. And he thought, oh, you know, what would I do out in the world? And he said, oh, I like the Diamond Sutra, so I might look in the diamond industry. So he went to New York and was, you know, looking for jobs in the diamond industry, and came across this couple of Jews who was just starting off their diamond business, and he said, and they were open to employing him, and he said, but I have one condition. I need to meditate at least one day a week in the workplace. And they said, well, okay, all right, let's see how that goes. But apparently that added so much to the business, and he was able to be highly productive and engaged, and the business really benefited from that as well. So it didn't take away from the business at all. It actually really helped and benefited the business.
And that's the change that I'm starting, well, I've actually been seeing ever since the beginning of my journey, is that old school paradigm of just, you know, work your staff hard is falling away, because people are realizing that's, you know, not the approach. It's actually the opposite. Treat them as human beings and watch your productivity soar.
And absolutely. So what are some of the issues that you're seeing at the moment in some of the corporate workplaces?
I would say it's the epidemic of stress. And I don't like to, it's such a cliched word, epidemic, but it really is quite, yeah, it is. It's widespread. It's in every organization, in every team, in every workplace.
What's causing it, do you think?
And one of our practitioners just sent me a news article a couple of days ago saying that half of all GP visits are actually stress-related, which is quite phenomenal.
Yeah.
What's causing it? That's a good question, and it's there's not a single answer to that. There's a whole host of factors.
Yeah.
And we can certainly cover some of those in our conversation, Adrian. But I'd say it's a combination of being disconnected, the irony of disconnection in a digital world. I think that's a factor. I think you know, the pace at which the workplace is changing. So there are a lot of organizations that aren't managing that change, or they don't know how to manage that change well. And so that leaves their staff, their employees kind of in that place of uncertainty, which causes a lot of stress. I think there's just burnout, you know.
Yeah.
People are working non-stop, not just 9 to 5 anymore. We're always connected. I just posted a blog post yesterday in our latest newsletter saying we need to switch off to switch on.
Yeah.
So, you know, people, it's a wonderful thing that we can now have this incredible flexibility of work, but on the other side of the coin, we need to have boundaries. Otherwise, we're not going to have any space for ourselves.
So true. You know, this new age, I guess, is one term of calling it, where with these devices, we're on call, and internet business is on call 24/7. It really, at the end of the day, it's up to us. Because I used to own an internet business, and I learned pretty soon that it's really up to me to establish my boundaries of my work hours, when I'm available and when I'm not available. But other than that, because the internet is on 24/7. So
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly. It's a real blessing and a curse at the same time.
yeah, yeah.
And,
So
they don't teach us at school how to use the internet, how to, manage social media. All these things are, it's an experiment, a massive experiment.
So I read a study recently where it indicated that only 20% of employees report they're actually engaged with their work. And what do you think is some of the most effective ways of improving employee engagement?
Yeah, that's a great question, Adrian. I think that it's about approaching the micro and the macro. So on the micro level, it's about ensuring that a person understands what their actual role is. So having a really well-defined job outline and ensuring that the corresponding responsibilities are made clear. So I think that's really important on a micro level. And then on a macro level, really having people understand what their greater purpose is, what their contribution is, as part of the bigger picture.
Absolutely.
And I think that will definitely help improve employee engagement. And of course, that has to come from leadership to a certain degree. And on that note, there's a new breed of leader that's starting to evolve. And, they're people that treat their colleagues as people, as human beings. They treat them with compassion and understanding, and they're a lot more authentic. They don't have to wear a mask so much.
Yeah.
And just ensuring that their team feel valued and that their role matters. It's about people and purpose, not just about profits.
Fantastic. Actually, I read a quote once that said, great employers must shift their focus from trying to get more out of their employees to investing more in their employees by addressing the four core needs: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. So then they feel freed and fueled and inspired to bring the best of themselves to work every day. But what do you think about that?
I couldn't agree more. That's actually the basis of our 7 pillars of personal health model. We tack on an extra 3 though. We also add social. We think social health is really important. That's about how you connect and bond with others, and are you working face-to-face, phone-to-phone? What sort of support networks are there? Also self, so self-esteem. So what do you think about yourself? How do you talk about yourself? How do you present yourself? And then sexual health as well. And that's, where are you in life in terms of menopause, andropause, puberty, your hormones, all of those things. And it might sound like, well, what's that got to do with workplaces? But it's all part of health and well-being. And with our lives being more and more intricately connected, that work-life flexibility, then it's equally as valid at work as it is elsewhere.
Excellent.
So, yeah, I totally agree with your approach.
So you mentioned that Holistic Services Group have 7 pillars, and
yes,
and so tell us more about the services that you offer and how they help.
So our basic model is about creating a culture of well-being in an organization. So you've got the 7 pillars of personal health, so spiritual, mental, social, emotional, self, sexual, and physical. And then what we do is we apply that as well to the actual business. So each of those 7 aspects has a corresponding area. So the first one is purpose, and that's often defined in the vision statement. So what's the higher good that your organization is pursuing? So that's the first thing we look at. Then we look at attitude. So how do people view problems in the organization? Do your team have a can-do approach? How are they talking about the business? Third one is relationships. So how are the bonds within management, teams, customers, suppliers, the greater community at large? And this also helps move an organization from a me approach to we, which is, that collaborative approach. And to do this, you need a leader that builds teams, develops teams based on trust, so they can bring together diverse ideas and personalities to make both personal and team contributions. The fourth aspect is morale. So how do you create an environment where people actually want to come to work and stay at work? The fifth pillar is support. So how well is staff appreciated? And, is there that gratitude, the sense of, wow, they've really done well. We're celebrating their success. So really appreciating the successes. And acceptance is the sixth pillar. So how well does your business provide opportunities for both male and females and address sexual harassment and bullying? And finally, but not lastly, is performance. So if we feel good and think good, then we do good. So those 7 pillars are the aspects that we look at when we go into an organization and create a culture of well-being. And what makes our approach unique is that we'll actually work from the top down. So working with the leadership and management so that it flows down to all staff that are working with the organization. So Adrian, for the past 15 years, what we've typically been doing is going in and providing, ad hoc sessions, lunch and learn sessions, stress management, resilience, positive psychology, nutrition. We'll have monthly workplace massages. We'll have weekly yoga, Tai Chi, and we do all of that as well. But what I've realized is we need to take it to the next level, because otherwise we're preaching to the converted. So if the senior C-level teams aren't actually working with that wellness perspective, then what sort of message is being sent throughout the organization? So that's our new model, which we've just released earlier this year, called A Culture of Wellbeing, and it's really exciting because we're getting phenomenal traction, and it's the way forward for sure.
And I also noticed that you offer corporate leadership retreats as well. So this is off-site retreats.
Yes, that's right. And something magical happens when you get a team outside of their typical day-to-day environment, especially into nature. I'm a real fan of taking people into, the bush and just giving them some time to switch off their phones and reconnect. And, as you know, living where you do up in that beautiful part of the country, it's really nourishing and rejuvenating. So not only do we want to have retreats be a space where people can deepen their work relationships, but also rejuvenate their personal lives as well.
Fantastic. Now, another report that I read recently is that millennials will be ruling our workforce by 2020, and this other report was indicating that up to 66% of millennials, though, believe or indicate that they will be leaving their job within the first 5 years, and which is a huge cost for an employer. Have you got any thoughts on how to retain millennials at all in the workplace?
It's interesting because the first thing that springs to mind is my brother, and he's a digital designer, a millennial, a lot younger than I am, and he works for one of the largest media organisations in Australia, and he's super talented, super passionate, but the problem is he's really disengaged, and the reason is that his management team are not giving him direction. So he really wants to get stuff done, but he's not being provided with the right strategy or framework. So they're just saying, this is what we want done, and just kind of leaving it in his lap. And so he's feeling like he just needs more of a collaborative approach. And I think millennials really want to connect with each other, and they want to feel like they can contribute. They want to understand the greater purpose of what they're doing and how that connects and relates to the organization at large. So it's not all about the money to them. And I think because of the short attention span, just with all the digital issues that they've been raised with, their attention spans are a lot shorter as well. And I think it's important to help engage them, is to give them a real sense of reinvention. So have them working on a specific area and then get them doing something else. Keep them enthusiastic and working on diverse projects as well, just to help keep them engaged. So I think those two things.
Yeah, it's a great answer, actually. Yeah. I'm sure it's quite a complex area too, as well. That we're going to see a number of different ways of managing that as well as time goes on. But what are some other trends that you're seeing in the workplace culture at the moment? Did you catch that?
Are you still there, Adrian? I think we just had a bit of a lag. Okay. Yep, got that. So what I said before, I'll reinforce, is burnout. The levels of skyrocketing stress is really evident. The second trend that I think is really clear, the work-life integration, the work-life flexibility. So being able to work pretty much anywhere in the world, whether you're working for yourself as a small business or, one of the large IT or accounting firms even. But there are problems associated with that. And, that includes being always connected, as we touched on before, also lack of discipline. When you're working from home, it's very easy just to, get up and be distracted or jump onto Facebook and start watching whatever. And so I think, output is actually decreasing. That's what we're starting to see. And then I think the third trend, which is also related to that, is just how everything is online. So, for example, in the health and well-being industry, especially with corporate health, I'm finding that a lot of our competitors have these digital portals and online portals, and there's an app for everything these days. And don't get me wrong, apps are great, but it doesn't replace face-to-face. And so, what I think sets us apart from the other providers is that we're really about relationships and face-to-face. Our workshops are face-to-face. Our coaching is face-to-face. And, we'll use Skype and Zoom where need be. And we've got a fantastic app that streams yoga, meditation, and so on through your phone or computer. And those are great for, remote locations. We've got some, organizations with quite a few diverse work locations where we can't always, for budget or logistics reasons, get our people in there. But yeah, so those are the trends we're seeing. And also, how I said before, I could never call anything a meditation session. So that's really great to see, that suddenly mindfulness, meditation, it's really gone crazy, which is fantastic, but it is in response to that stress issue.
Excellent. Thanks for that.
And the other thing is mental health. The taboo around mental health is really not there anymore, which is fantastic. But we're actually starting, ironically, to see it go the other way, where suddenly everyone has a mental health issue and everyone's feeling anxious and everyone's feeling depressed. And I think what we need to be mindful of there is just taking accountability for ourselves and understanding, okay, so what am I doing to look after myself? Nutrition, exercise, connections, social connections. So it's interesting the way, trends do ebb and flow.
Yeah, absolutely. That's I'm seeing that massively too, just indirectly in some of the areas that I work in with personal insurances. The largest amount of claims are occurring in the areas of around mental illness. And one of the interviews that I've got is with a psychologist that works at a university, and it's going to be a really fascinating talk with him about resilience and what he is seeing in the work that he does as well. So tell me about what do you see as some of the greatest potentials for improving workplace culture in Australia?
So I think, considering how quickly the work environment is changing, I've heard, I think it was a McKinsey report that said we're changing 10 times faster and 300 times more in scope than the Industrial Revolution.
Wow.
This is, the workplace. And so what we're finding is that companies aren't keeping up with their values. So they've got these, mission statements and values from a while ago, yet they don't really have meaning, and then the staff, employees don't connect to those values. So I think it's about finding meaning in those values. It's also about leadership, embracing that, Brené Brown, have you heard of her, about vulnerability and, like I said before, authenticity, and just not being afraid to take off that mask and just show up to work as a real human being with all foibles, all warts and all. So that's what I see. And again, self-led leadership, so taking responsibility for oneself as well. As one of our facilitators says, tough love. So there's only, so much a leader can do, but ultimately it's also up to the individual to be their own leader and take responsibility.
Yeah, actually that's a big one that I really resonate with, and I often encourage with people that I talk with as well. Self-leadership is something that I'm so strongly and passionate about, because at the end of the day, for me, what self-leadership is about is really about knowing thyself and what my values are, what I stand for. When I know that, then I can connect with my tribe, with people, and have meaningful relationships with people, and be more engaged in the work that I do as well. It's
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And sometimes it takes a bit of hand-holding, Adrian, to get there. We've still got a very old school approach in a lot of organizations, and some of our clients are moving really quickly from that dinosaur era to this new paradigm, and it's, you know, just makes me feel so good and just so filled with joy to see the benefits, you know, the transformations, the epiphanies that whole teams and individuals have because they're turning up to work with a totally different mindset.
Fantastic. And so
Makes
yeah.
my job very enjoyable even after 15 years.
I can see that, and I'm hearing it too. I'm loving this chat. But and finally, can you tell us, are there any other inspiring projects or initiatives that you've come across around the workplace culture recently?
Well, of course, I'm slightly biased in terms of thinking that our culture of wellness, you know, having that top-down approach where we go in and work with leaders and C-level managers to really have that culture of wellness trickle down throughout the whole organization. I see that as, you know, personally incredibly inspiring, and to see the results of how our clients transform when they embrace that type of initiative. That would be my first one. I'd also love to mention humanity in business. Have you heard of humanity in business? My friend Manish has created that organization, and it's all, as the name suggests, it's all about how can we create a better world, a world where we look beyond the financial profit motive and look at what else is involved in you know, in being an entrepreneur in today's world.
Yeah, I love
kind of similar to Richard Branson's Plan B.
Yes, yeah, and I love one of Seth Godin's quotes where he says, you know, we don't need more stuff, we need more humanity.
Yes, yes, exactly. And that's also makes me think of the conscious capitalism crew. Yeah. Which are about the same thing. So, yeah, I think that's what's exciting is that, you know, that old, remember studying in high school that the chief modus operandi is maximize shareholder profits. And, you know, I think we're evolving past that now, which is great to see, and those that aren't are being left behind. And, you know, it's great to see, and it has to happen because we're living in some pretty challenging times, and if we don't evolve, then well, there's no other option, is there?
No. Excellent. Well, this has been fantastic chatting with you, Michael. Thank you so much for your time today.
My pleasure. I've really enjoyed it. It's been great, Adrian.
Yeah,
thanks for having me.
Really inspirational insight and answers too. So yeah, I look forward to keeping in touch and to finding out more too.
Fantastic.
Now, is there anything? Have you got any workshops or any projects or that our viewers and listeners can follow up with?
So maybe if you can put a link to the Culture of Wellness program.
Sure.
That's our. You know, that's what I'm really super passionate about right now. But I'd say our retreats, our corporate retreats, are also really
great. I'll put them up on the site as well, because you've got some coming up in December, January.
So all our retreats are tailor-made. So it depends on when our client has time, basically. So we don't do any retreats for the public. They're all designed by each client.
Great.